Welcome to the Economy Magazine. I'm Benjamin Chong Alfares with a top economic report. Coming up on today's show, Nicaragua builds its own interoceanic canal, and Poland goes gourmet with caviar. First, the headlines. Greek lawmakers failed to elect a new president in the final round of voting on Monday, leaving the country facing an early election that could derail the international bailout program. The only candidate in the race, former European Commissioner Stavros Dimas, fell short of the 180 votes needed to become president. Under Greek law, a parliamentary election must now be called, leaving financial markets facing weeks of uncertainty. A general election is expected to be held by early February. AirAsia shares plummeted on Monday as investors reacted to the disappearance of yet another Malaysian passenger jet. Company shares trading in Malaysia closed down nearly 8%, following an earlier drop of more than 12%. Flight 8501 departed from the Indonesian city of Surabaya with 162 people on board and lost contact on Sunday morning. AirAsia is frequently named the best low-cost airline by industry group Skytrax, a distinction it won again in 2014.
There's a deep sense of depression here, but we'll stay strong. And our first priority now is to look after the families.
Emerging market stocks rallied to three-week highs as investors expect Beijing will take further steps to support economic growth, and oil rebounded slightly. The Shanghai Composite Index reached its highest level since January 2010 in intraday trading on Monday. Russian shares also rose as Brent futures climbed as much as 1.6% in London. Russia's MICEX index increased for a fourth day, climbing 2.7%, while Lukoil, Russia's second biggest oil company, surged 6.5%. The president of Germany's Bundesbank said growth in Germany will likely be higher in 2015, and the situation in the EU is not as bad as many think. Under current circumstances and while oil prices remain low, Jens Weidmann told a German newspaper inflation will be lower, but growth will be better. Still, the Bundesbank this month halved its growth forecast for Germany to 1.0% for next year. Weidmann, a member of the European Central Bank's Governing Council, is the most vocal opponent to quantitative easing, seen as the ECB's last resort to revive the economy. Israeli startups get acquired more quickly than their European counterparts, the Wall Street Journal reported, citing data from Dow Jones Venture Source. At the end of the third quarter, the 8 Israeli venture-backed firms acquired took 3.95 years from the first round of funding to the exit. Germany came in just behind Israel at 3.97 years, while the average period in Britain was 6.66 years. Some critics say, however, that the increasingly short lifespan of Israeli startups show entrepreneurs are too quick to sell out to foreigners rather than build their business to its potential. One of the poorest countries in the Americas and a little-known Chinese businessman this week began digging a new canal connecting the Atlantic and the Pacific. But the ambitious $50 billion project meant to boost the Nicaraguan economy leaves many questions unanswered. Here's a report by Daniel Roth.
Work has begun on a new canal connecting the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans through Nicaragua, which will have a major impact on global trade routes when it comes into use. The $40 to $50 billion canal is being dug by a Hong Kong-based development group, which is run by an up-and-coming Chinese telecom tycoon named Wang Jing. Though he has connections among China's political elite, he says the project is a private affair and that fears about this being a Chinese government move are unfounded.
From the beginning to now, this project has had no factor and no element from the Chinese government. Seeing as though there are no elements from the Chinese government, then there are no geopolitical factors.
The waterway, when complete, should rival the U.S.-dominated Panama Canal, which has run into its own recent expansion woes. This move should bump up the Nicaraguan economy, which is the second poorest in the Americas, according to the Reuters report. The project, which will include an airport, railway, oil pipeline, and 2 free trade zones, is being framed as a benefit for all by Nicaraguan President Daniel Ortega, once a Marxist fighter.
I say to our brothers in Latin America and the Caribbean that this project has been moving forward, and today it's reached a new phase. It's a project in Nicaragua for its people, for our America and the world.
Questions abound, though. There are environmental concerns such as how much the 278-kilometer project will impact Lake Nicaragua. As well, people will have to be displaced, a reality that has led to protests by landowners and supporters.
Regarding compensation for landowners, in my opinion, there is no issue more important.
The Nicaraguan government says the canal will be open by 2020 and will boost annual growth by 10%.
According to a new report published by the IPPR think tank, women could boost the EU economy by 700 million British pounds if they were given flexible working options. Here to discuss more is I24 News editor Karen Kirsch in Femonomics. Ms. Kirsch, thanks for joining us.
Hi, Benjamin. How are you?
Good. So what is the story here?
Well, this is another report which proves the point we've discussed and probably will discuss again and again and again, that as long as working hours are the way to compensate people and not, for instance, capacity, women will be underprivileged in the workforce, and that it also has something to the economy loses from it also.
Right.
So this report, what they did is actually they went and they checked how is unemployment rates expressing themselves throughout Europe, and of course there is a major gap between the men and the women all across the board in the EU. And the rate of unemployment among women isn't changing. And the other thing that they checked is how does it express in terms of part-time work or in terms of being able to be flexible at work and still sort of be compensated in a way that's good both for you and for the economy.
Right.
In the UK, only 19% of women can adapt their work to
The need, so to speak.
Their other needs.
Yeah.
While in Sweden it's 41% and in the Netherlands it's 38%. And of course that lack of flexibility in the work derails women out of the workforce or forces them to go on a mummy track instead of staying on management or more, let's say, productive career paths.
Basically, the governments of countries that don't recognize the fact that they need to adapt to the needs, different needs of women versus men, lose out.
Yes,
that's the story.
Yes, lose out millions and millions.
Right.
Both governments and in private employers, because it's something that we see that happening more and more in high tech, for instance. It happened, and it always has pros and cons because when you allow flexible hours, a lot of times men and women work more.
Right.
When you don't check how long people are working, a lot of times, and you look only at their capacity, a lot of times they actually end up working more. So employers lose, employers win.
Right.
It's a tricky situation. But what this report is showing is that regardless of if it's good for the economy for the long term or for the worker in terms of labor rights, it is definitely good in terms of the numbers. If you allow for flexibility, women will be more productive. And the economy will gain and taxes will gain, and that's something that cannot be avoided. And just another point on that same point, like we've talked about in the past, the UK as well as other places, including Israel, have decided on quotas and on trying to promote the number of women within the public sector.
Right.
And they publish a report in the UK each year, and they published their recent report just yesterday. And in the UK, they didn't stand up to the targets of 2014. So they're kind of disappointed. And it actually relates to complaints against the Prime Minister, against David Cameron, that he's not pushing women hard enough.
Interesting, but this is specifically in the public sector.
Yes, of course, because in the private sector you can't actually do that unless you do, and we've talked about it last week. What happened in Sweden when companies are being forced to have 30%. And if they don't have 30% of women on their boards and on their non-executive boards, then you can, delist them from the stock exchange or stuff like that. But most of these efforts are being done on the public sectors, and they're influencing the private sector, because it is a sort of a...
Right, there's a congruence, so to speak,
yes,
between the two.
Yes.
Well, Karen Kirsch, i24 News editor, thank you very much for joining us and giving us more understanding of the importance of the flexible work option.
Oh, definitely.
Thank you. After flooding the world with its vodka, then apples and berries, Poland is going gourmet and trying its hand at making caviar. Here's more.
At this fish farm in Rus in northern Poland, hygiene isn't something to be trifled with. Caviar production's a meticulous business. The air here is swapped out 20 times every hour. Time is also of the essence. From the moment the sturgeon fish is killed, there's only a 15-minute window to extract the precious eggs. But it's the quality of the fish themselves that makes all the difference.
For starters, you need a good fish. The quality of the eggs is key, as is the amount of time you take to pull them out. The process itself is relatively simple, but making great caviar depends on a number of factors that are more art than science.
Outside, hundreds of mature Russian and Siberian female sturgeons swim around fish tanks in lake-rich northern Poland. Before arriving here, the fish spent the first 7 or 8 years of their lives on a fish farm in Gosolwice, one of Europe's 3 largest sturgeon farms.
When we started selling our female sturgeons, we knew full well that their eggs were top quality. We just had to find a place where our mature females could swim around and get prepped for the caviar process.
French chef Michel Morin has lived in Poland for 15 years. Whilst countries like France, Iran, Italy and Russia are known for producing the fishy delicacy, Michel's confident Poland's quality production will also start reaping rewards.
Poland makes really good vodka, great livestock, we have good fish. I don't mean the Baltic Sea, unfortunately, but if we get our fish from fresh water, we're able to raise some really good stuff. And now a caviar like this, I'm convinced there's a place for it on the market.
With caviar selling for just under €2,000 a kilogram, there's a growing number of fish farms setting up, keen to cash in on the caviar business. And the producers of this made-in-Poland production are no exception. They hope to become Europe's biggest producer of the gourmet treat within the next 10 years.
And we're joined now by i24 News reporter Daniel Roth for a discussion of some other stories from the world press in Media Watch. Daniel, thanks for joining.
How's it going?
Good, good. So I understand you're taking us to talk about Elon Musk again.
Yes, my favorite billionaire, Elon Musk. But actually, we're going to rewind a little bit, and it's a story about what another billionaire, Larry Page, CEO of Google, said about Elon Musk in a Q&A. Bill Gates and all these billionaires have been signing away their fortunes, saying they're going to give it to charity or whatever. So Larry Page actually said he'd rather give his billions to Elon Musk, a fellow billionaire. Now, this can sound cold-hearted. What he was trying to say was essentially that Elon Musk is a visionary. He's a guy he's the CEO of Tesla, so he's working on ending oil addiction through bringing about the advent of the electric car. He runs Solar City, which is working on making solar power ubiquitous.
He's trying to make the world a better place.
Yeah, he's also trying to get us to Mars, so trying to make sure that that's a backup plan. But he's a visionary, and so Larry Page was saying, look, don't give your money to charity. Charities waste money. They don't know what to do with money. They throw it around. And of course, this is an argument that goes on in every sector and for decades and decades. But there's a major piece, there's a major flaw in this when you're comparing between giving your money to a corporation or a billionaire versus a charity. There's a whole sector of the world of society that's not included there, and that's the public sector. That is also an option. If you're a billionaire and you're looking for where to put your money, one of the options is the public, dare I say it, the government.
Which seems in this sense, I mean, Elon Musk is giving, so to speak, to the public. I mean, at the end of the day, when it's a charity or it's a private concern, you have to, actually, see where the money is actually eventually going, right?
Right. So, I mean, and that's one of the reasons you can say Elon Musk and you don't want to say some other guy. But it's a question, how do you spend your money? Where do you put it? And what's the bottom line of those people?
Right.
Whether it's profit or service. These are the questions at hand.
Gotcha. Okay.
A related story, Stanford is about to embark on a 100-year study of how artificial intelligence is going to affect the economy.
Right.
So that is self-aware, self-learning computer systems and robots. How is that going to affect the world around us? Interestingly enough, Elon Musk was quoted recently as saying that this is what he believes one of the biggest threats to humanity.
Dystopia.
And Stephen Hawking, so it's not only the billionaires who think so.
They watch the same movies.
Yes, they watch the same movies. I watch the same movies. I share the same fears.
I'm going to have to tell you, we have to go on this note. Daniel, thanks.
Thank you.
Well, that's our economy magazine for today. Thank you very much for watching. I'm Benjamin Chonglefaris. Follow me on Twitter at Chonglefaris and send us your comments. Join us again tomorrow. Thank you.